Under the new framework, contractors would competitively bid their own designs rather than compete solely forthright to manufacture the end product. 16. More changes. The Ballistic Research Laboratory, BRL, used computerized tools during the development of the M1, which led to the development of BLCAD. Here, a Vector General 3 graphics terminal displays a model of M1. Through the period while the initial prototypes were being built, a debate broke out between Germany and US about the use of the 105mm gun. The Army was planning on introducing several new types of ammunition for the 105 that would greatly improve its performance, notably the XM774 using depleted uranium. These rounds would give it the performance needed to defeat any Soviet inquiries. There was some concern that depleted uranium would not be allowed in Germany, perhaps just in peacetime, so improvements to the tungsten cord M735 were also considered. Through this same period, there was an ongoing effort to improve NATO logistics by standardizing ammunition to the maximum possible degree. The Germans were moving ahead with their 120mm gun on the Leopard 2K, and noted that the British had also introduced a 120mm gun of their own in keeping with their long-range combat doctrine. By 1977 the decision had been made to eventually move the new tank to a 120mm gun. After head-to-head testing between the Royal Ordnance L11A5 and the Rheinmetall RH120, the latter was chosen. The turret designs of the two prototypes were modified to allow either gun to be fitted. Although the L11/M256 120mm gun was chosen to be the main weapon of the M1 Abrams in 1979, the improved ammunition for the gun still was not fully developed, thus delaying its fielding until 1984. 17. The early production versions of the M1 Abrams, M1 and IPM1, were armed with the M68A1, 18, for Tory Assens. First was due to the large number of M60 tanks, with the M68E1 gun still in widespread US service in the 1980s and a large on-hand stockpile of 105mm munitions. Fitting the M1 with the M68A1 gun was viewed as an economical and practical solution that allowed for commonality in ammunition among the two types of tanks. 19. Secondly was that the M68A1 could employ the newly developed M900 APFSD's depleted uranium round that had improved penetration performance in comparison to the M774. 20. Prototypes. XM1 prototype S. Chrysler General Motors prototypes were delivered in 1976 by Chrysler and GM, armed with the license-built M68E1 version of the 105mm Royal Ordnance L7. They entered head-to-head testing at Aberdeen Proving Ground, along with the Leopard 2 AV prototype for comparison. The Leopard 2 was found to meet U.S. requirements but was thought to cost more. 13. The testing showed that the GM design was generally superior to Chrysler's, offering better armor protection, and better fire control and turret stabilization systems. 15. These early pre-production prototypes were provisionally armed with the M68E1 105mm main gun, while a preferred 120mm gun and its ammunition were in their design and component development phase. These prototypes used a combination mount that allowed for evaluating both 105mm and 120mm guns. 21. During testing, the power packs of both designs proved to have issues. The Chrysler gas turbine engine had extensive heat recovery systems in an attempt to improve its fuel efficiency to something similar to a traditional internal combustion engine. This proved not to be the case. The engine consumed much more fuel than expected, burning 3.8 US gallons per mile, 890 L/100 km. The GM design used a new variable compression diesel design. 15. By spring 1976, the decision to choose the GM design was largely complete. In addition to offering better overall performance, there were concerns about Chrysler's engine both from a reliability and fuel consumption standpoint. The GM program was also slightly cheaper overall at $208 million compared to $221 million for Chrysler. In July 1976, Lieutenant Colonel George Moorman prepared a stack of letters informing Congress of the decision to move ahead with the GM design. All that was required was the final sign-off by the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld. 15. Chrysler is chosen. The finalized M1 prototype on the 20th of July 1976, United States Secretary of the Army Martin Hoffman and a group of generals visited Deputy Defense Secretary Bill Clements and Director of Defense Research and Engineering Malcolm Curry on their decision. They were surprised when Clements and Curry criticized their decision and demanded the turbine be selected. Donald Rumsfeld heard arguments from both in the afternoon and asked for 24 hours to review the issues. The Army team spent the night writing briefs and presented them to Rumsfeld the next morning, who then announced a 4-month delay. 15. Within days, GM was asked to present a new design with a turbine engine. According to Assistant Secretary for Research and Development Ed Miller, it became increasingly clear that the only solution which would be acceptable to Clements and Curry was the turbine. It was a political decision that was reached, and for all intents and purposes that decision gave the award to Chrysler since they were the only contractor with a gas turbine. 15. However, the Chrysler design had the advantage that the entire power pack had room to be replaced by any number of engine designs, including a diesel if needed. 13. The turbine engine does not appear to be the only reason for this decision. Chrysler was the only company that appeared to be seriously interested in tank development. The M60 had been lucrative for the company and relied on that program for much of its profit. In contrast, GM made only about 1% of its income from military sales, compared to 5% for Chrysler, and only submitted their bid after a special plea from the Pentagon. 15. On the 12th of November 1976, the Defense Department awarded a $20 billion development contract to Chrysler. 15. Production starts. In January 1978, a program was initiated, 22, to develop an enhanced version of the 105mm gun, the M68A1, 23, as a possible alternate weapon for the M1 Abrams. The new XM24 /L55 gun barrel was 18 inches, 45.72 centimeters, longer in comparison to the XM24 /L52 barrel used on the M60 tanks. 24. It has a higher chamber pressure, 18, reinforced breech, A, and a higher muzzle velocity. 25. Low rate initial production, LRIP, of the vehicle was approved on the 7th of May 1979. 14. In February 1982, General Dynamics Land Systems Division, GDLS, purchased Chrysler Defense, after Chrysler built over 1,000 M1s. 26. The M1 Abrams was the first vehicle to adopt Cavorm Armor. 105mm M1 Abrams tank of the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment at Grafenwöhr training area in Germany. 1986. A total of 3,273 M1 Abrams tanks were produced during 1979, 1985 and first entered U.S. Army service in 1980. Production at the government-owned, GDLS-operated Lima Army Tank Plant in Lima, Ohio, was joined by vehicles built at the Detroit Arsenal Tank Plant in Warren, Michigan from 1982 to 1996. The U.S. Army Laboratory Command, LABCOM, under the supervision of United States Army Research Laboratory, ARL, was also heavily involved with designing the tank with M101 armor-resistant shells, M829A2 armor-penetrating rounds, and improved weapon range. 27. The M1 was armed with the license-built M68A1 version of the 105mm Royal Ordnance L7 gun. The tank featured the first of its kind Cavorm armor. The M1 Abrams was the first to use this advanced armor. It consisted of an arrangement of metal plates, ceramic blocks and open space. 28. An improved model called the M1IP was produced briefly in 1984 and contained upgrades to armor and other small improvements. The M1IP models were used in the Canadian Army Trophy NATO Tank Gunnery competition in 1985 and 1987. About 5,000 M101 Abrams tanks were produced from 1986 to 1992 and featured the M256 120mm, 4.7-in. smoothbore cannon developed by Rheinmetall AG of Germany for the Leopard 2, improved armor consisting of depleted uranium and other classified materials, and ACBRN protection system. Production of FM1 and M101 tanks totaled some 9,000 tanks at a cost of approximately $4.3 million per unit. In 1990, Project on Government Oversight in a report criticized the M1's high costs and low fuel efficiency in comparison with other tanks of similar power and effectiveness such as the Leopard 2. The report was based on data from U.S. Army sources and the Congressional Record. 29. By 1999, costs for the tank were upwards of $5 million a vehicle. As the Abrams entered service, they operated alongside M60A3 within the U.S. military, and with other NATO tanks in various Cold War exercises which usually took place in Western Europe, especially West Germany. The exercises were aimed at countering Soviet forces. Adaptations before the Persian Gulf War, Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm, gave the vehicle better firepower and NBC, nuclear, biological and chemical, protection. Persian Gulf War. The Abrams remained untested in combat until the Persian Gulf War in 1991, during Operation Desert Storm. A total of 1,848 M101s were deployed to Saudi Arabia to participate in the liberation of Kuwait. The M101 was superior to Iraq's Soviet-era T-54/T-55 and T-62 tanks, as well as T-72 versions imported from the Soviet Union and Poland. 30. Polish officials stated that no license-produced T-72, nicknamed Lion of Babylon, tanks were finished before destruction of the Iraqi Taji tank plant in 1991. 30. The T-72s, like most Soviet export designs, lacked night vision systems and then modern range finders. Though they did have some night fighting tanks with older active infrared systems or floodlights. Very few M1 tanks were hit by enemy fire and none were destroyed as a direct result of enemy fire, none of which resulted in any fatalities. 31. 3 Abrams were left behind the enemy lines after a swift attack on Tallil. Abrams tanks move out on a mission during Operation Desert Storm in 1991. A Bradley IFV and a logistics convoy can be seen in the background. Airfield, south of Nasriye, on the 27th of February. One of them was hit by enemy fire, the two other embedded in mud. The tanks were destroyed by U.S. forces in order to prevent any trophy claim by the Iraqi Army. 32. A total of 23 M101s were damaged or destroyed during the war. Of the 9 Abrams tanks destroyed, 7 were destroyed by friendly fire and 2 intentionally destroyed to prevent capture by the Iraqi army. Some others took minor combat damage, with little effect on their operational readiness. 33. The M101 could kill other tanks at ranges in excess of 2,500 meters, 8,200 feet. This range was crucial in combat against previous generation tanks of Soviet design in Desert Storm, as the effective range of the main gun in the Soviet forward/Iraqi tanks was less than 2,000 meters, 6,600 feet. This meant Abrams tanks could hit Iraqi tanks before the enemy got in range, a decisive advantage in this kind of combat. In friendly fire incidents, front armor and foreside turret armor survived direct armor-piercing Finstabilis, discarding sabot, APFs, hits from other M101s. This was not the case for the side armor of the hull and the rear armor of the turret, as both areas were penetrated on at least 2 occasions by unintentional strikes by depleted uranium ammunition during the Battle of Norfolk. 34, a destroyed M101, hit in the rear grille by a Hellfire missile and penetrated by a sabot tank round from the left side to right, see exit hole. During operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm, some M1IP and M101s were modified locally in theater, in the war zone. By modification work orders, MWO, with additional rolled homogeneous armor plating welded on the turret front. The M1 can be equipped with mine plow and mine roller attachments. Lessons from the war improved the tank's weapons sights and fire control unit. Waco Siege. M101 tank beside the burning compound of the Waco Siege. During the Waco Siege in 1993, 2 M101 Abrams tanks were deployed by the FBI against the Branch Davidians. 35. Upgrades. The M102 was a further improvement of the M101, with a commander's independent thermal viewer, weapon station, position navigation equipment, and a full set of controls and displays linked by a digital data bus. These upgrades also provided the M102 with an improved fire control system. 36. The M102 System Enhancement Package, SEP, added digital maps, Force XXI Battle Command Brigade and below, FBCB2, Linux communication system capabilities for commanders, and an improved cooling system to compensate for heat generated by the additional computer systems. 37. The M102 SEP also serves as the basis for the M104 Wolverine Heavy Assault Bridge. The M102 SEP V2, version 2, added common remotely operated weapon station, CROWS or CROWS 2, support, color displays, better interfaces, a new operating system, better front and side armor, and an upgraded transmission for better durability. 37. Further upgrades included depleted uranium armor for all variants, a system overhaul that returns all A1s to like new condition, M101 AIM, a digital enhancement package for the A1, M101D, and a commonality program to standardize parts between the U.S. Army and the Marine Corps, M101HC. Improvements to survivability, lethality, and protection have been sought since 2014. 38. Iraq War. An Abrams crossing the Euphrates River at Objective Peach on Rabinoso Float Bridge deployed by the 299th Engineer Company in 2003. Further combat was seen during 2003 when U.S. forces invaded Iraq and deposed Ba'athist Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein in the Iraq War's Operation Iraqi Freedom. Some crews were issued M136 at 4 shoulder-fired anti-tank weapons under the assumption that they might have to engage heavy armor in tight urban areas where either main gun could not be brought to bear. During the invasion, at least 9 Abrams tanks were put out of action by fire from rocket-propelled grenades. One achievement of the M101s was the destruction of 70-72 in a point-blank skirmish, less than 50 yards. 46 m, near Mahmoudieh, about 18 miles, 29 kilometers, south of Baghdad, with no U.S. losses. 39. This was in the face of inadequately trained Iraqi tank crews, most of whom had not fired live ammunition in the previous year due to the sanctions then in operation and made no hits at point-blank range. AM-101 conducts reconnaissance in Iraq, September 2000.